Welcome to The Strategic Edge, the podcast for entrepreneurs and business owners who want a competitive edge in the market. They want to be seen as the expert in their industry, and they're looking for cutting edge and innovative strategies that work across industries to help them scale their business like a boss. My name is Carden, and I'm your host. Welcome to the show. Hey everyone, it's Carden here, and I want to welcome you to The Strategic Edge. And I am so excited about my guest today, Ken Fay. He is an Emmy Award-winner, writer, director, and producer. And he really believes that everyone has a voice through their story, and it's part of their message. He has been a senior producer for mega corporations such as Comcast, NBC Universal, and as a director of productions for startup companies. He's done a lot of work with nonprofits, and he has worked coast to coast and also in Asia. Now, Ken won an Emmy Award in 2014. He did a mini documentary from the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting. So, Ken, welcome to my show.
And thank you so much. Great to see you. Great to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. You just have such an incredible background, and I love everything that you've done. And he was actually helping me with some of my lighting right before we got on here. So just so my listeners know, and Ken, just so you know, I only have 3 rules on my podcast. Now, we don't script anything, right? We didn't do any scripting. I want everything to be completely organic and conversational. So we are just going to have a conversation about what you do. We want to have a lot of fun. So we don't want to take this too serious. And we want to give great value to our listeners. And the Strategic Edge is all about giving of strategies that will work across industries to help business owners really be able to stand out, to create a space in the market that is unique to them, and really be able to elevate their brand and build their business. So again, I'm so excited you are here.
Thank you. Yeah. And what's more fun than storytelling?
Right? I know. Everyone loves a great story, right?
Yep.
So let's jump into that, because one of the things that I want to talk about is your Emmy Award. So first of all, he writes, he produces, he directs, he just kind of does it all, which is so awesome. But I really want to talk about your Emmy Award for the reason you did something incredibly unique when you created that mini documentary. So I would love for you to talk about that. But I also, did I leave anything out about what you've done or what you want me to share with the audience about your background?
No, that's pretty comprehensive. Yeah, that's been my career for quite a while.
Okay.
In that genre. Yep.
Perfect. Well, then let's jump in and let's tell us about this award, because it really is an incredible, unique story.
Yeah, so telling that story. So you have to know that Newtown is my home community. I was living there at the time of the shootings. So I was really involved in what was going on in our community. And unfortunately, of course, I know some of the families. I know some of the children that we lost. And so it really strikes you on a visceral level. So I'm living that. Well, a few months later, I have the opportunity, I'm asked to kind of do a story, and I have the opportunity to do a story about Newtown and in the aftermath of what happened. And I'm racking my brain to think, how do I tell this story? It was one of the hardest stories to tell, because it was personal.
Right.
I've told a lot of stories of others, and it's a privilege to be in that spot to tell someone's story. It really is. It's a responsibility to handle it with care. And I found myself looking at myself saying, how do I tell this story? How do I write through that? How do I produce that? What do I make that's going to be something that's just going to hold their memory, and something good? And so what happened is, and this is how all things kind of come together, we had a bunch of dogs, golden retrievers from Lutheran Church Charities, show up in town. And these dogs and their people and their teams, they were just there to give love and compassion and help us up off the ground and talk to us and counsel with us. Oh my goodness, beautiful people. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I've seen their action in the field for a few weeks before this assignment came. I'm going to do a story about that. I'm going to do a story about the healing. Not the tragedy, not
I
all
love
the,
it.
everybody understands that. but the healing. What happened from there? From there, with just this simple creature like a golden retriever. So I had to start thinking backwards, and I'm like, well, listen, ah, I'll tell this story in the guise of a golden retriever, all right? And I have to tell it to children because it's innocence that we all lost that day. And I have to tell that story through the innocence that we all lost. I thought, what better way to do that than to make it kind of like a puppet show, kind of like Muppets, kind of like any children's programming you may seen. So what I did is, we had a studio. I had a green screen. I had a good friend who's a puppeteer named Jeremy Heil. I had him create for us Wags, which was a golden retriever puppet. He came to the studio. And at that time, I knew the dog teams. So I had Maggie is a dog, and Addie, her sister, were both still serving in town. So I had Maggie show up to the studio, and I had Wags and Maggie in the studio like you would have a children's show. And I had a very simple background. I had an animated background. I had Wags the puppet talking to Maggie, just as a way of a vehicle. Again, we'll talk about this later about storytelling, but as a vehicle to pull the narrative thread, to have something to kind of jump back to when I talk about this very serious matter. So then I added to that. I made it short. I made it like a children's show. So I had little images of Wags showing up in the corner of the screen, saying a few things, popping down, and then introducing a new subject. And I did this little video that talked about the healing, why the dogs were there, how they were there, what they were doing, the impact it had on our community. And through that telling, the Boston bombings happened. And that was really close by home to me too, being in Connecticut.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that shifted my thought, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that happened just now. And so what I did is I started to have a team go into the Boston area and get some interviews from those folks and how the dogs were responding to that deployment. And I was able to kind of put those two things together and weave it into like a very innocent telling so that it could be watched by audiences of all ages. Because I wanted kids to see this and understand what was happening, And I put that out there. I touched upon the tragedy, but I just touched it and left it. And I mostly focused on what these dogs were doing and the hope and healing. And that's another narrative piece, connecting with your audience in such a way. And it was helping, honestly, it was helping me. I was able to work through my own story of working through this. And I put that out there. And it's a little bit later, we get this notification that it's up for an Emmy. Emmy nomination. Wow. And a little bit later than that, there it is. And there I am. And I'm in the same room with Leonard Nimoy, the actor. And
that's fantastic.
And there it is. And they call your name and there it is. And it was such a moving experience for me as a writer, director, producer, and a story that's the hardest story I've ever had to tell because it's personal, but a story that had to be told. And I had to tell it. I had to get it out of me. It's in you and you have to tell it. And when that happened, one of the most amazing parts of that is not only that won the Emmy, but other people that were up for that category in the children's educational and children's outreach category, they were writing me emails and texts and saying, I'm glad you won that. That's the piece that should have been. And that just meant even more because it was just community.
Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps.
It was the community coming together. And don't we do that? Or don't we all do that in this life, right? Here we are in this pandemic, reaching out to one another.
This is almost a perfect time to talk about something like this, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whenever we fall into these things, our shared story, how we tell our stories, it connects with us on a visceral level. And storytelling is an art and a science, right? It's like, it's an art because of how you tell the story and you create a picture in someone's mind, but it's also very much a science. Not only the technology you can use, but the idea that it actually engages your brain in a different way. And when you engage the brain in a different way, if you're telling the story, your audience feels what you're saying. They can almost taste and smell and feel. That almost wires their brain, because we're all wired that way, to actually have those moments of experience, even though we're just listening. And that's where you connect with someone and you can pull them forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. First of all, what an incredible story. And, I love the approach that you took with something so tragic and so sad, but how you just took such a positive, wonderful, healing approach to that. That's incredible. And well-deserved Emmy for sure. And one of the reasons I really wanted to bring Ken on is because right now in marketing, in business, in everything that we're doing, story is important. Story is what gets attention. Story is what attracts people to you, right? And it's just an incredibly powerful thing for people to understand how to use in the right way. But it's connection. It really just builds connection with people.
Yeah, you create a community. Just like
Mm-hmm.
telling a story, you're creating a tribe. You know, just think back to cave drawings on a wall, right? The hunters go out, they come back, they draw these cave drawings on the wall. Those that didn't go get to witness what they saw. So they're putting an image in their mind, trying to explain to them. Well, we're
Mm-hmm.
wired that way as humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have a page to write in this life, and every
Yes.
generation has a chapter. But we're all writing in this giant book called humanity. And we all have an
Yes.
ability to tell our story. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone's story needs to be heard, and everyone has a
Mm-hmm.
voice. And it's the trouble is trying to find out, how do I engage with an audience, or how do I tell my story, or does anyone want to hear my story? Well, the truth is they
Mm-hmm.
do. They do. And by telling your story, so not just your personal bio story, right? How do you tell that? Some people will shy from that, and that's fine. But your brand,
Mm-hmm.
your market, your service,
Mm-hmm.
your industry. Tell that story as if it's a
Mm-hmm.
living thing. I want to know, I want to experience your service. I want to experience
Mm-hmm.
your team. And if you grab those things, oh my goodness, you create an experience for your listener, your
Mm-hmm.
experience for your audience. And that's what we gravitate toward. That's why we
Mm-hmm.
love the movies that we love. That's why we love the characters that we love. We're all characters that play a part in our story, and our stories intersect. It's connection. It's connection.
I love that. And really that is where inspiration comes from, and why people do things, because they were inspired by someone or their story. And it's a really, really powerful concept.
Mm-hmm.
Not just on a personal level, obviously, who doesn't love a good story? Like, I have to say, my husband is one of the best storytellers. It's so funny, and he's so animated when he tells his stories too, that it just pulls people into them. And I'm not like, I don't think I do that good of a job that he does, but it's such a powerful concept for people to grasp, and everyone loves to resonate with a good story. And even like in my own business, I talk about why I coach people in their businesses and consult, because I made so many mistakes in business through the years. Well, that when I tell those mistakes, that makes people appreciate even more
Oh,
the message that I have for them.
right, right. So you're connecting with them on another level. We're all
Mm-hmm.
human. We all have failures. We all have issues. We all have things and challenges to overcome. But what you're saying is, and this is what we hearken to, there's certain narratives out there that we all have. Man versus machine, or all
Mm-hmm.
these narratives, right? The classics, right? I've had to study all those classics. But the thing of it is you're talking about overcoming. We love the
Yes.
underdog story, right? We love that
Right.
overcoming story. Oh my goodness, we wrap around it and we say yes. And that's because it touches back to an innate quality in all of us. We know that
Mm-hmm.
we can fail and fall, but it's overcoming, and it's having that victory. And
Yes. We
yep.
all love a hero, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We love
Oh,
heroes. You made that. I love that. You made the dog the hero. You made the dogs the heroes of the story, which was it was brilliant, just brilliant.
yeah.
So share some tips. How do people do this? Like, how do we do it in a way that isn't, it doesn't feel so self-serving, or it doesn't feel so arrogant, or boastful? How do you do it?
Yeah, that's a hard thing, right? But the thing is, remember this: your story, your narrative, is not just you telling your story. It's also the reaction of your audience back to you. So a story is fully told when it's told to an audience and a reaction happens. So there's three parts of every narrative. If you think of it, there's a setup where you explain the characters, the faces, the places, the spaces, even if that's yourself or your business. There's a
Mm-hmm.
turn. There's a turn moment where they've set up, they understand it. Then there's a turn where they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, I can see how that could work for me. Or, oh, that's amazing that you reached out and did that. Or, wow, that is really interesting. That's a turn. Then there's a
Mm-hmm.
transformation. The transformative moment is when they go, I like what you're saying. I want to buy from you. I love your service. How do I support you? How do I
Mm-hmm.
learn more? Every narrative has that transformation. If you even take that back in entertainment, think of your best movies. There's a setup, there's a turn, and there's a transformative moment for the characters and honestly for the audience. So when I ever develop anything, or I develop a series or a feature or a documentary, I'm always interested in that other part, watching the audience watch the piece. That's the closure to what's created, because otherwise it's just half a story. The whole story is the reaction. So think about it that way. Think about the reaction to your story. That'll help you in writing your content and saying, this is where I want them to feel or see. I want to empower them. I want to have them have an experience and enjoy this story or what I have to offer them. And I want them to come back to me and want more. I want to see part 2. I want to watch the sequel. I want to know more about you. And so by doing that, by infusing motivation, inspiration, teaching moments, and listen, there's a lot of vehicles to do that with, and there's ways that you can just kind of stop the conversation or have a pause in a moment of a narrative, but that's to get someone's attention again, and then move forward, and then show them. You know, a lot of the great stories and things that we've seen, even now, especially right with this whole, you know, the COVID and the pandemic.
Sure.
Those stories of people just doing amazing things and coming together as a community. Those are transformation moments. This touches you. We're akin. We're akin. We're a lot closer than we're not. And as a human beings, we all have a human experience. So it's a privilege. Just put yourself in that space and realize you're not necessarily, you don't have to boast about whatever. What you're doing is you're talking about something and trying to connect your audience to that. And if that moves, that can move their heart and their mind and their direction. And it's a responsibility to do that.
I love that. You know, I think too, we, in business especially, you know, we talk about story a lot, and we talk about even a business when people can relate to, okay, maybe you've been a veteran, right? And you tell your story and how you got into your business and built your business, and people will resonate with that and will connect with that. Any business can do this, and every business has a story, right? And of course we do as people, but even every business, just like I said, the reason I actually became a business coach and consultant is because I made a ton of mistakes, and I didn't want other people to have to go through those same mistakes. There's no reason for it anymore, because there are people that can help them not have to experience all those pitfalls and everything. So, you know, I love to bring that in my copy and in the things that I'm talking about. But every business can do this. You do a lot of work with nonprofits, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
And this is a huge thing for them.
Huge thing for nonprofits and fundraising organizations. And, you know, outside of commercial business, I've done a lot of work for, you know, I've done commercials, I've done all those things. I've done technology and bio and tech and healthcare and insurance and, you know, a lot of corporate video, a lot of specials, a lot of series. Nonprofits always they're trying to reinvent their voice. You know, they offer something. Usually it's a humanitarian service, right? Usually.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out, well, how do I tell that story and where do I connect that into someone? Why should they care? And so when I sit down with a client like that, or we have, you know, pre-production, it's always trying to figure out, what are your messages? What's your primary vision goal? What's your mission statement? What's your message? What is your vision? I always want to open the box in creativity, and I'll say, no barriers, no barriers. How have you always wanted to tell your story? What did you always want to see? What do you feel about what you do? And what has been the reaction? And then we take that and we kind of meld that down and we mold it. It's like clay. And then we work with clay, and then we get it to a point where it's like, yes. And then when we fire on that clay, that's when it's exactly hits the mark. And it touches their entire mission statement. So you kind of want to build a pyramid of conversation. So you may have 10, 20 points. Well, let's whittle that down to 10. Let's whittle that down to 5, and then 3. And then really kind of hammer on those main points and think about the setup, the turn, and the transformation as we do it, so that you have a message statement.
I have to take a note of that. The setup, the turn, and the transformation.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. And look for that. Look for that in the stories you watch. Look for that in look for that in a comedian, in fact, right? Look for that anywhere. Look for that in how someone tells a story. Usually that's the kind of the set. And it's something that resonates. And think about all those family gatherings you've ever had with family or friends, and you're sitting around a table. Don't you love those stories when they come back and you just relive those moments?
Right.
that's all. It's all familiar, and that's the reason why people love to watch sequels. They love to watch something again and again, right? Like little children will want to watch the same movie like 15,000 times. It's because
Mm-hmm.
there's something familiar. They know it's going to come, and they can't wait for that moment again. And it's the experience. Well, the same thing can happen in a business or a corporation or a person. You can tell that story again, and that's okay. And every time you tell that story, it refines you, it defines you, it resets you, it resets what you're offering. And by looking at it that way, you can kind of get through the narrative piece. And then you always want to think of that narrative thread, that one thing that pulls all that messaging together. And usually
Mm-hmm.
that's that vision statement, that's that mission statement, that's that
Mm-hmm.
cause or effect. Stories are cause and effect, and that's what you want to hit. You want to hit that mark. And by
Mm-hmm.
pulling that narrative thread, you bring your audience along with you for the ride, and they get to this point, and it makes sense to them. And then it makes sense for your organization. So you want to stay with your branding. You want to tell your brand as a story.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your company and service as a story, and wrap yourself around that amazing journey, giving an experience to your
Mm-hmm.
audience or listener. When you watch something and try to learn something, there's science behind this where you could look at a PowerPoint and see a bunch of facts. Well, you can memorize that, certainly. Some people do that, and that's wonderful. People
Mm-hmm.
tend to remember narrative better than that because there's a story that goes with it, and they know 1, 2, 3 equals 5. Well, they know that this
Mm-hmm.
event, that's why that happened. And there's some people that
Mm-hmm.
memorize that way, using a narrative memorization, where they'll walk through a story to remember what's to do next. And so there's something to that just connects with us.
That's interesting. A lot of times when I'm doing like educational videos and things like that for content, I like to pull stories in when I'm talking about a particular, okay, let's face it, business can be boring, right? Showing people numbers, that can be boring. But what I like to do, and you can tell me if this is right or wrong, I love to pull in stories of maybe a past client that, we did this and this is what happened. And this was the struggle and then this is what happened, and I love to, or pull in one of my own stories where this is what I did wrong and this is what happened. Is that what you're referring to?
That's part of it. The testimonials is what you're referring to,
Mm-hmm.
are classic narratives. That's saying, I have someone, they took my service, it transformed their life, now they're better for it. You will be too, right? That's the classic testimonial. But
Mm-hmm.
that's shared. What you're doing is you're sharing an experience of someone using your service, demonstrating to your listener, oh, I could be that person too. If that's told in the right way, then that's something
Mm-hmm.
someone can relate to, saying, oh, I have that issue too, or something like that. Oh, it worked for them, and that's the kind of that testimonial. So yeah, there is that narrative style that you could use, and that's why things like Yelp and reviews on Google, and that's why people do that. I want to review and see what someone else has said about this.
Sure.
Part of
Right.
that, right? Testimonial, right? We all
Mm-hmm.
do that. We all have that in the background running as a program. So when you hear someone say, I really love this restaurant down the street, they have amazing, and they start to describe their food, you're like, oh, I
You
want to
get
go there.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going.
Yeah. And so
Bye.
and so when you create content, the same rules apply. There's like nothing that suddenly shifts. What
Mm-hmm.
shifts is how you tell that story, and realize that you have a different way of telling that story, the technology used to tell that story. But
Mm-hmm.
what I found in my time doing all this is the human heart doesn't change. Technology continually changes, and that's awesome. It gives you more tools to work with, but the heart doesn't change. And it's just connecting back to the care. I care
Mm-hmm.
about you, and that's why I have this service, because for you it'll do XYZ, right? And having that narrative, what you're kind of doing is making your service or product or business the hero to solve someone else's pain point. When
Mm-hmm.
you do that and they realize, oh, that actually does solve my pain point, I want to know more. And then you
Sure.
continue your narrative. Yep.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. So based on, let's say you're going to go work with a business, take us through a little bit of your process so we can see, so we can kind of, relate to this.
Sure. So what I would do is I would come into the business, we would talk, we would sit down, I would do a lot of R&D prior, obviously. So I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
R&D, right? Then when we get to the conversation, I'm looking at what they have as an outsider, looking at what they're doing currently, how that's working for them, and what their pain points are. They may have said, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're having issues with this, or we need more ROI in this, or we need to change this, or there's a new campaign, not sure what it should look like. You kind of look at their background, because the beauty is if you can just kind of pull that narrative thread through what
Mm-hmm.
they've done, makes sense to an audience, people will follow that journey rather than suddenly an abrupt change. And I don't know this company. That's different than that company. It's the same. So I try to look at it through those eyes. Then we sit down and we just chat. Literally, like I said, I open the box. I'm like, listen, this is a creative brainstorm. Tell me everything. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you have seen. What do you like that works? But more importantly, how have you always wanted to tell your story? Like, tell me your story. You know, we're just hanging out. We're just in a room together. Talk to me. Tell me your story, and let's see. And then I'll listen to how they're telling their story. And if it just flies off the tongue and they just understand it, I'm like, there you have it. You have it. Now let's take those nuggets. Let's take those ideas and let's kind of whittle that down into segments. Right? I'm thinking about that setup, turn, transformation segments. And they're giving me facts and figures and numbers and ideas and services and stuff. And that's all going into this funnel of creativity. It's kind of like as a writer, director, producer, you're like a lightning rod of creative energies that fly all around you from all different people. And you focus that energy to the mark. And so you just take in everything they're saying. You literally absorb what they're saying. You learn about their business. And then you bring it back to them. And as you reflect back what they've said to you, a lot of times they'll say, oh, I never saw it that way. Oh, wow. You're talking about us. That's us. You know, and I've had those conversations and I'm like, yes, that's you. This is the reflection of what you've given me. And now we're going to talk about how to do that in content, you know, and then we'll talk about genre. We'll talk about, you know, texture and feel, and we'll get involved with, you know, compliance and all those other parts too. And then all that will start to gel into something that'll work for them. And honestly, when you make one video for someone, you know, this is the big secret, right? But not really. When you make a video, promotion, a piece, anything for anyone, there's a ton of video that can be pulled from that. Whether it's the white section, some social media is huge, right? So social media, you want to pull out little 30, 40-second bites and pieces for Instagram, and you want to get it out there on various channels because we don't live on our TVs anymore, right?
Right.
Look at what we're doing right now. So this is that we're in that part where we can just really have so many more tools to tell our story on. We have so many more stages. Right.
And once we do, it's out there forever.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Yep. And so when you do that, and so you just want to take all that stuff and put it on these different channels and be able to point back to that same point you want to make as an organization, whatever that call to action is. That's called the call to action at the end. You know, like the action for you is to do this. And that's the transformation moment. That's the moment where you want them to say, I do want to do that call to action. So so what I do is I build. Almost, again, like clay, we just build this beautiful statue, and then we just put that statue out there, and then we build around that. We don't just stop there. You start to build things that will hold that up. You start to build other things around it that keep pointing back to it. And over the course of time, that's how some brands, you don't even have to have their name. You can just see their symbol or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's a trusted thing, and you can make any brand, even if you're a startup company. You can make any brand sound and feel and be really what it is at heart, which is more than what you're seeing right now. And I think people forget that there's a heart to business. You know, I mean, you talk about numbers and analytics, all very important and absolutely important. But there's also a heart underneath that. Why does this business exist, right? Of course, make money, expand, grow. Of course, create jobs.
Yeah, but there's always more to it than that. It's about their family. It's about their life. It's about, you know,
Right. Yep. And I think, you know, in this world right now, we'll go back to that. I think people see that. People understand it when a company's like, I'm just in it for the money, or, hey, look, I'm in it because I have a service and I want to do something for you. And I care about you. I want you to be okay. And if you know what, listen, if it's not me, you know, go over here and get help over here. You know, I mean, think back to the Miracle on 34th Street, right? Where it's Gimbals and Macy's, and the Santa Claus says, oh, go to Gimbals. How could you say that? Well, oh my goodness, people started flooding into Macy's, right? In that storyline. But that's kind of a thing too, where you're like, I'm just here to help you.
Sure.
Right? Whatever the hell that is. I'd love for you to come to me. But listen, you know, I know there's other things. And I want to create something that's going to make you want to come to me. So it's care. It's care with your client, care with your story. Yeah. And putting that out there and then launching it.
No, I think you make such a valid point too. And business, again, it's always deeper. It is, of course, business is to make money, but there's always a reason why people go into business, right? There's always a story behind why people start a business. And I have multiple stories, and I have yet to meet anyone that didn't have a story of why they went into business. And why do you do what you do, Ken? I mean, you've got a story. So, I think it's really, really powerful. I love, though, that you're helping people in business and nonprofits, and you're really helping them craft that in a way that is going to really help them build their brand and bring the ideal audience right to them. But I also love what you said, because I know I do this a lot. Hey, I'm not the right person for you. This isn't my area of expertise. Someone else, this person would be better for that. And so it really is also kind of about identifying who you are, what you're about, what your expertise is, and then stay in that lane.
Right. And if you do that, then you're going to be the expert for your client in that field. And they're going to know that. They're going to appreciate that. That's it's like any human experience. We're creating relationships every day.
Right.
As a business, as your service, again, it goes back to that narrative of, this is my service and business. This is the reaction of my client and audience. That's the full conversation. I want to make sure that that full conversation is heard. And so as a creator, I want to be sure that that's the conversation for your business or client that's heard. I want them to hear the whole conversation so that they can come back from it going, oh, we're connecting. Oh my goodness, this is great. And it's just building and building on that. And then eventually you start to build an archive of footage and video and campaigns and series and stuff. And then you have a legacy. You have a historical archive of where your business has grown. And my goodness, I've talked to a lot of CEOs that have been in business forever. And the best conversations are where were you then and where are you now?
Right.
And you see the light up in their eyes and their face when it's success. They're like, oh my goodness, well, back then I was working out of a garage, and I was trying to make it work. But my goodness,
sometimes we forget that. We forget those stories. Yes.
Right. And then you can see that growth in them, and they've grown too. And that's just special. With all the accolades and awards that I've received, and I'm blessed for every one of them, no doubt. One of the ones that stand out are the people that have said to me, thanks for giving me a voice. Thanks for showing me what I was doing. Thanks for reflecting back to me my business. I love my business. That's the moment. That's
wow. That's really powerful. It's interesting. I was on a guest on a podcast a few weeks ago, and they had me dig into my very first story of why I started my business. And they had me literally, I think, for almost the whole hour. I'm talking in great detail about building this business, 29 years ago, before technology and all of that. And, I hadn't thought about, I've given the high level, oh, this was my first business. But I had not really thought about the details of what I had done and what I had come through. And they were wowed by it. And I'm like, oh, it's just my story, right? And I haven't really talked about it. But they found it so interesting. And so that really is the power of what you're talking about. We take it for granted. It's our story, right? And so I love what you said about the CEOs that are like, wow, I was working out of my garage, and there's so much to that. So that's fantastic. So tell us, you gave us 3 great points: set up, the turn, the transformation. Any other points that you can give us, pointers on how we can do this in our business?
Sure. So another thing I refer to is something I call creative adaptability. Be adaptable. Allow the creative to come in. Remember, I've counseled a few clients and people in this, and as we create different stories, remember when you were a kid and you could imagine your whatever, and that imagination, that creative fire, that spark, whatever that is, we all still have it. And some of us have just really compressed it, but honestly, think that way. Be creative in how you outlook, and don't hold yourself back with barriers like, well, I just can't do that. Well, mark it out. Just mark it out and say it out and start to work toward that goal. There will be a creative way of making something happen. It may not look exactly as you thought it would, but there are creative ways to make something happen in that realm, or just kind of work toward that goal. So adapt your creativity to your business. Business models sometimes are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all we do. But if you adapt your creativity mindset, it's all about mindset. If you adapt the creativity mindset to your challenge, you're going to overcome that challenge. You just think about anything you do on the weekend and you're like trying to figure something out. Well, you're adapting creativity and imagination and you're applying it to something, right in front of you. That pulls you through. That gives you more options. That makes you start to think about, how can I do this? No barriers. Also, how can I make that happen? And the answers will start to come and you'll start to chat it around with other people. So being adaptable and using a creative mindset can pull you through many, many challenges. It's just keeping that.
I could tell lots of stories about that. I mean, 29 years in building 6 businesses. There were so many obstacles and we didn't have coaches. I didn't have coaches. I had to figure it out. I had to get very creative and, in doing all of that. And you're so right. It's interesting. I haven't really thought about all of those things. But that's such an interesting point that you make, that to just really focus on that. And it also taps into a different part in your brain as well.
Right.
And once you get that creative side going, you become more and more and more creative, right? Like it becomes so much easier.
Absolutely. It adds and adds on. So in my own life, right, so I do this for a career, but my goodness, that doesn't just stop when the day stops. So I'm an artist, I paint, I play music, I write other things, I tell stories, I work with people, I do heart projects that are just because it's a story that needs to be told. In fact, I'm working on a production now about the homeless and how COVID has hit the streets and is affecting the homeless population here. And we're doing a series on street medicine. And so that's a project from the heart. And that's something I'm just consulting and giving help to a group just to create those stories that need to be told. So there's never a moment that I'm not like, I need to create something, right? I'm a creative spirit. And it's because, my career's been that way. But my goodness, when I started all this, it was a hot summer day back in the summer with my brother and some friends and a camera over peanut butter and jellies. We're like 7, 8 years old. And we want to do a scene from Robin Hood in the backyard, so that's what we did. We redid this scene from Robin Hood.
I would love to see that.
It's hilarious. We had costuming and that was just, we were just like, we wanted to tell a story. We wanted to just wrap ourselves around the narrative and just create something fun. And we were showing it to our parents. Well, it became, this neighborhood would want to watch us make the movie. It became this big thing. And so I'm a natural storyteller, I guess. I've always been that way. But I've had the blessing and opportunity to train up in that and work with amazing teams. It's never one person, right? It's an amazing team that you work with. And teams and people and corporations and product to craft those stories and then give them out to the world. For a creator, they're like little tiny birds that you create and send out. but honestly, and they come back, and it's just treating it with care. Everyone has a story to tell. You have a voice, and everyone watching this, you have a voice. You have a story. Tell your story.
That's fantastic. I love it. So I say that a lot. I love it. I love a lot of things. What can I say? So I said this was going to be very organic and we wanted to have fun. You definitely gave massive value. There's no doubt you are so brilliant at what you do. And I want to know or tell our listeners who right now they can hire you. You've got, and so yes. So tell our listeners who you work with, who you could work with, who should hire you, who you're looking for as clients. Give your pitch.
Sure. Well, so right now, I am wide open. I am looking for a position. I am looking for clients. I am looking to consult in the creative sphere, whether it's writing, directing, or producing, coming up with content, creating content, helping you with your marketing and your sales. There's a lot of things that I'm a value add for because I'll think of things a different way and will add value to what you're selling. So I'm wide open to work with teams, companies, corporations, big and small. I'm also wide open to relocate at this point. COVID has hit everything very, very hard. So I am willing and able, and half my life is packed in boxes right now. So the company I was with was sold, and that was a good thing. That's what they wanted to do. And I've been consulting ever since. And now I am looking for that next position. I'm looking for the work with a team to help them tell their story, to make an impact, and then to turn that around and grow their business through storytelling.
Fantastic.
Through that connection. Yep. And you
That's
can find me. You
amazing.
can find me on Instagram at Ken Fay 1. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's a great place to find me as well. I'm pretty much all over the place. If you look up my name, and direct message me or email me,
Hmm.
or call.
And again, nonprofits. I don't think you mentioned nonprofits, but that was one of the things you said, and I can
Yep.
see this being so powerful for nonprofits as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I have some people I want to connect you with,
Oh,
Ken, that
thank
I
you.
think, that I'm going to see if there might be some great camaraderie there, some opportunity for you there. But reach out to him if you want your story to be told by an expert, by someone who is completely brilliant in his space. You can even say, hey, we had an Emmy Award winner produce our story for us for our business. If you want that, you have got to reach out to Ken. And of course, we'll put all of his links and everything in the show notes and share those. But he's just a super guy. He was actually referred to me by a friend of mine, and I just feel so blessed to have had you on here to share your story, and it's just incredible, and it's so inspiring too. So I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses to do more with their story, with their message, find their voice.
Find your voice. Exact. Thank you, and I really appreciate this time. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time to spend your narrative with us a little bit today.
Well, thank you so much for being on. And to all the listeners, I hope you find a lot of value. He dropped a lot of gold and gave a lot of value in this. And I think anyone can use this, but reach out to him for sure. Reach out to him and just have a conversation with him and see if he can help you just build your story into your business and just really elevate your brand. So Ken, thanks again for being here.
And thank you.
And all right, and we'll talk soon. Thank you, everyone, and you all have a wonderful and amazing and blessed day. Bye-bye.